Well, welcome back to another week of the Bucket List Adventure Travel Show. I am here having come back from Peru, which is why I played the Inca Trail video at the beginning. I thought it was quite good to kind of revisit that trip. I didn't do the Inca Trail this time. I did the Salcantay, so it's a little bit different. There is a podcast that will be coming out soon about the Salcantay trek. But I will talk about that in a little bit more detail, I'm sure, later on. But for now, this week we are talking about how to pack light for a trekking trip. So it's been a couple of weeks since I've been on this live. I've been away on a few trips back to back, so it's been a very exciting couple of months. It is good to be back and getting to speak to you guys again, getting to talk about all of my favourite things. So this week we have got how to pack for a trekking trip, specifically how to pack light. I think it's a really great topic, and it is one that we get asked a lot of questions on normally. So if you are watching, please put your questions into the comment section. Let me know who's watching. Let me know where you're watching from, and feel free to comment in with any of the questions that you might have. I'm going to be having a look on Instagram because we are live on Instagram as well. So don't forget that if you are watching on Instagram, you can also comment in your questions, and I will do my best to answer them while we're here. But we do quite a lot of trekking trips at the Bucket List Company. It's something that we started out with. That was kind of our main focus when we first started was trekking trips, and it's always a bit of a tricky style of trip to pack for, and it's always a bit of a tricky style of trip to purchase equipment for. I had a phone call this morning with somebody who is joining us on Aconcagua. If you're watching, you know who you are. But we were talking all things equipment and all things kit. And it was becoming quite difficult to work out what to take and what not to take, because you do have some weight restrictions and you can't quite get everything in there that you might ideally like to. But it is possible to pack for a trip like that under the under the weight restrictions. Andrew Shaw, hi Jake. I thought the Salcantay trip was awesome. It is awesome. It was fantastic. We all had an amazing time. Yeah, it was brilliant. I really like the Salcantay, actually. I wasn't sure whether I was going to like it as much as the Inca, because I've only ever done the Inca Trail before. But actually, I really enjoyed it. And there was something about getting to spend that much time in the mountains. And also, as Keith and I were discussing the other day, there's something really nice about being able to have that shower when you get back to Aguas Calientes before you visit Machu Picchu. That's actually a really high point. Feel free, guys, if you've got questions about Peru, if you've got questions about the Inca Trail or the Salcantay or anything like that, or any of our trips, then do pop those in as well. So if you've got a trip booked with us, or you are thinking about booking a trip, or you just have any travel questions, then do put those questions in, because now is a perfect time, kind of for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, for me to be able to sit down and answer those questions. So I was having this conversation with this customer this morning, and we were talking about all the different types of kit, and it does get very complicated, especially when you first start out with trekking trips, and you get sent a big long kit list from us, and it does include basically everything that you are going to need. There's nothing else really that I'm taking with me that isn't on that kit list, so you do really need pretty much everything on there, but it's quite difficult to figure out what the best things are to take, and also how to get it on weight. Now, one of the biggest problems that I see when it comes to a trekking trip is that people overpack, firstly, and that is one of the best ways to pack light for a trekking trip, is to not overpack. So a good example is when I was on the Salcantay, you get given a very small duffel bag to take 7 kilos of kit with you up into the Salcantay Mountains. And everyone looks at the size of the bag and they think, well, that's hardly big enough to put my sleeping bag and my boots in, let alone everything else that I'm going to need. So everyone starts to panic. But what I have to say, or what I do end up saying at the beginning is, well, don't panic, because you're wearing your boots on day one and you're wearing your first day of hiking kit. Well, you've only got 3 more days after that. So you actually don't need much more. Now, realistically, you're going to be wearing the same pair of trousers for multiple days. You're going to be wearing the same jacket for multiple days, probably the same fleece, unless you have a lot of room, and then you might take 2. So you are going to have to kind of embrace that it is going to be camping, and it is going to be that style of trip. You are going to need to wear the same clothes again and again, but everybody's in the same boat. So don't worry, it's not a fashion show. I'd be screwed if it was. It's not a fashion show. It is about people being able to, pack everything that they need within the space without taking too much. Now, the duffel bags are kind of one thing that you need to bear in mind. So you've got 7 kilos for your duffel bags on a Peru trek. But then the other thing to consider, and what I always say to people is, well, don't put 7 kilos in your duffel bag and then put 15 kilos into your day pack, because we don't weigh your day packs. So you can put stuff in there and it won't count towards your overall weight. Now, the reason that we cap the weight when it comes to duffel bags, and it's the same when you go to Nepal or Tanzania, it's because porters or mules and donkeys and horses have to carry your equipment, and by regulations we do have to make sure that it's all compliant and that we're not overloading people or animals that are carrying our equipment. So the duffel bags are very, very strict, but we don't weigh your day packs unless obviously in Nepal you've got your internal flight to Lukla, and that then does have an impact because it all gets weighed together. But that kind of then does open up a couple of problems, because I have known people to massively overpack their day bags as well. And it's just about the worst thing you can do, because especially if you're going to altitude, then every few hundred meters of altitude makes your bag feel heavier and heavier. And you might start off thinking, I can carry that weight, I can take that bag, 15 kilos, yeah, I can carry that. But actually, when you get to like 5,000 meters, it feels way heavier. And that's when I noticed that people start really struggling. You've also done quite a few days of trekking already. So do try and keep your day pack, I say ideally, down to about 5 to 7 kilos is what I ideally say. Now, examples of what you would have in there: first aid kit, your water. Now, a litre of water weighs about a kilo, so do bear that in mind as well. So about 2 litres of water I tend to recommend, depending on the trip. You're going to have some waterproofs. Always carry some waterproofs in there, potentially a jacket if it gets really, really cold, and then your snacks. Okay, so all of that should be in your trekking pack. You don't really need to go any heavier than that. And I've had people who have told me everything in there is essential, everything that I need is in that day pack, and it is, I haven't overpacked. I got really tired, and I've said, well, can I have a look and let's see what I can take off you? And I've started pulling out battery packs and iPads and full wash kits like this, like it's crazy. And obviously it's not their fault necessarily, because if it's the first time that you're coming and doing this, then it is very difficult to work out what you need and what you don't need. So one of the biggest ways that you can save weight when you're on a trekking trip is just by not overpacking. Okay, and we're really good at helping you determine what to take and what not to take. When we go to Nepal, you get to leave a bag in Kathmandu, and the funniest thing is that everybody turns up and they go, oh yeah, I'm going to take everything with me on the trek, I don't need to leave anything in Kathmandu. We then go through those bags and say, well, you don't need this, you don't need this, you don't need this. And the bag that they leave in Kathmandu is way bigger than the bag that they actually end up taking with them to Everest Base Camp. So don't overpack is the key one, but we can help you with some ideas for that. Now, the other thing that helps you pack light for a trekking trip is to focus on those big items. Okay, lots of people will jump straight into sawing their toothbrush in half, buying smaller water bottles, not taking loads of pairs of underwear and socks, or maybe just not taking them at all. Like, they start cutting down on things that actually don't really weigh very much, and they'll do that for the whole trip. They'll be cutting down on this. Right, I don't need this, I don't need this. I'll take less t-shirts and less stuff. But then their sleeping bag weighs 5 kilos. Whereas my argument is, if you know that you're going on a trekking trip beforehand, really consider the weight of your bag, and those big heavy items traditionally that are going to weigh you down. So your sleeping bag is one of them. Okay, my sleeping bag comes in at, I believe, 1.5 kilos. Okay, and that's a big down sleeping bag. Now, I think that's quite heavy. You can definitely go lighter than that, but I know people who go much heavier than that, and it comes in at like 2 or 3 kilos. Well, that extra kilo that you could have saved on one item, that's your entire supply of socks and underwear for the entire trip. So you don't need to start cutting all of those items to compensate for your big ticket items. So really make sure that when you're buying your sleeping bag, you do take weight and warmth into consideration. That's really important, because you don't want to then get away with, or try and get away with, taking a summer sleeping bag to somewhere like Nepal because it's less heavy. You still need a proper down sleeping bag. You just have to find the balance between weight and warmth as well. Okay, but we've got some good recommendations, and we can help you with that as well. Another one would be a backpack. Now, that's another big item that everybody's going to have with them, and the weight varies massively. Certain backpacks that are quite good, the Osprey Talon, it's about 33 litre. It's what I recommend for these trips. That's quite a good bag to take. It doesn't weigh very much. Now, things that make a backpack weigh more. One is if it's got like a metal support going down the back. Great for supporting your back. Not really great for long distance trekking because it does just increase the weight. Whereas the Ospreys and low alpine style bags, they've actually got like a mesh barrier at the end, at the back. And that saves a lot of weight, but also gives you that support and gives a little bit of a distance between your backpack and your back, so you don't get so sweaty. And that's actually a really, really nice thing to have when you're hiking, is just have that breathability, going along the back, because it's the back, it's the shoulders, that's where sweat builds up, that's where the straps rub, and that's what causes people a lot of problems. And the amount of times people get to the end of the day and they're going, "Oh, my back is really, really sore." Well, by buying the right equipment, by testing out the backpack before you go and commit to a trekking trip, or before you get on that trip, that's really important. But the weight is a big thing. Now, some of these bags again will come in at like 3 kilos. I think mine's about 1.5. Now, I still think that's very, very heavy. I'm not saying that I've got the lightest backpack in the world, but it's lasted me 7 or 8 years. And I love it and I take it everywhere. But I just am aware that my bag is about 1.5 kilos already. Other people come in and they've got a bag that is like 500 to 800 grams. Okay, makes a big difference. It suddenly frees up another kilo that you can be using for all sorts of extra things. And you might have all of your essentials, and you decide that you want to take a book with you, or your iPad, or more snacks, or whatever it might be. But it gives you that flexibility. Okay, but try not to go too crazy with all of those extras, because the lighter your equipment is, the more refreshed you're going to feel every single day. And that's actually really key for when you're brilliant. Yeah, we put a video into the notes on our recommended kit, so definitely check that out. That is going to help you out loads. What I was saying was, it's really important not to overpack, and that's the thing. You can save lots of weight on certain items, but then you still end up going and overpacking. It's really important not to do that when you've got long trips, and I'm sort of multi-day hiking trips, like 4 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, that type of thing. That's where you're going to notice that your body is slowly getting more and more tired. And the first couple of days, you might be absolutely fine. You're putting that backpack on, you're completely fine. But after a week, that's where you're going to start thinking, okay, well, actually, it's now feeling a lot heavier. I've sort of worn myself out throughout the entire trip. So if you can save that weight in the beginning, you're actually going to make, or it's going to make a big difference in terms of how fresh you're feeling. And I've noticed when it comes to summit nights, when it comes to final days where you're reaching the destination that you've been after for the last couple of weeks, there is a big difference between those that have looked after themselves physically and those who have just gone too quick, too fast, and pushed themselves a little bit too far. Okay, so sleeping bag, that's a really good example for where you can save weight. Your rucksack is a good example for where you can save weight. Now, your boots as well. How to pack light for a trekking trip, in my opinion, doesn't just come down to what is in your bag. And quite a lot of the time, people neglect what's on their feet. Now, I read somewhere, and I don't have the exact figures. I'm sure people are able to go and have a Google and do a bit more research. I'm totally doing this kind of off the cuff, but there was something that said that for every extra pound on your feet, it feels like an extra so much, but it was greater than what the actual weight is. And that was something that I've now taken into consideration when I buy my boots, is that, okay, I'm so obsessed with cutting down the weight that's on my back, but then I've got these really big chunky boots. And what I've noticed is that now, by buying lighter pairs of hiking boots, I actually feel a lot fresher at the end of the day for such a simple change. But it does make a lot of sense, because obviously, as you're picking your feet up, that is going to tire you out. If you've got these big chunky hiking boots, that is going to be exhausting. So little substitutions that I've made now when I shop for hiking boots is, I personally don't buy leather boots. I find leather boots are heavier. Lots of advantages to them, but for the international trips that I do and the multi-day hikes and all that sort of stuff, I tend to like synthetic. I find it lighter, I find it easier. It does then also give me the possibility of, if they are under a certain weight, I can get away with taking some trainers and some boots. So on the last trip that we did to Peru, just got back from the Salcantay, because I had enough weight available, I was able to wear my boots on the days that I needed to, but then I was able to change into a pair of trekking trainers, more like an approach shoe, more like a trail shoe. and they're super lightweight as well, but really, really, really comfortable for when I'm hiking on hotter days, So there were lots of people that didn't have that luxury and they had to wear their big boots, and it was fine and it will get you through. But what I'm saying is, if you start making these small changes with everything, it just frees up so many possibilities for you. And then you can start to learn what you like and what you don't like, and what's useful for you and what's not useful. Some people are just going to take a pair of boots and they will always hike in boots, and that's great. But then they're able to carry more clothing, more equipment, maybe they are going to buy a heavier sleeping bag or whatever it might be. Okay, so it frees up some options. But your boots is a really good one to save weight on, because it will fatigue you less if you've got lighter boots. Another one that comes down to how to pack light for a trekking trip is going to be your roll mat. Now, I've seen some really heavy roll mats over the years. A lot of the trips that we do, roll mats are provided. So do check on your kit list before you go away on a trip with us, whether your roll mat is provided or whether it's not. That's something that will save you a lot of weight, is if it is provided. But if it isn't, then, and you're looking for a style of roll mat, then I would definitely recommend an inflatable one. You can get lots of different brands. Some of the more popular brands would be Thermarest and Sea to Summit. Those tend to be some quite good brands for roll mats that are inflatable. I personally have had both in the past, and it just saves you a lot of weight when you're packing for your sleep setup. Now, I talk about recovery. I talk about longevity on a trip and making sure that you are prepared for it being a marathon, not a sprint. And a lot of that comes down to how well you sleep. If you don't get any sleep on these trips, then it is going to be tougher for you every single day. So we've done separate lives and podcasts on that, how to make sure that you can sleep properly. But eye masks, earplugs, headphones, pillows, that kind of thing. But you're having a good sleep setup is really, really important. Part of that is by making sure that you've got a comfortable roll mat that keeps you off the ground, warm, and obviously is comfortable. That's quite a big one. But the inflatable ones weigh nothing. So I actually have now, I've got the Sea to Summit. I think it's the ultra light or something. It literally weighs nothing. I mean, we're talking like grams, a couple of 100 grams maximum, which is insane. So I know that is a really easy pack for me, because it makes up such a big part of my sleep setup and it doesn't really impact my weight at all. Now, if we do like a quick adding up, you're kind of talking, okay, well, if I've got 2.5, 3 kilos in my sleeping bag, and then I've got another 2 kilos in my backpack, okay, well, that's roughly 4 or 5 kilos. And then you've got all of the rest of the stuff, and you've got a 7 kilo limit on something like a Peru trip. Well, obviously your backpack's not included. That's still a huge amount of weight that you've already got that's been cut out of your allowance, and ones that you can save very, very easily. So that's kind of what I would say is the key takeaway from this live today is, if you're looking at how to pack light for a trekking trip, then focus on those big items where you can save a lot of weight, rather than focusing on small items like cutting your toothbrush in half. Now, it is possible to go down to that extreme, and you can definitely do it. I remember we had one of our guides, or two of our guides actually, on a trip a couple of years ago now, and they were off to do, I believe it was Island Peak, might have been Mirror Peak, but I think it was Island Peak. And they had a little competition between the two of them, because they were both going out on the same trip, about who could pack the lightest. Their allowance was like 13 kilos. And I think they did the entire trip packed with like 6 kilos. Okay, it's absolutely insane. But they were going to the extreme of, I'm cutting my toothbrush in half, I'm taking 3 pairs of socks, I'm going to wear my boots, I'm going to do all of this sort of stuff. I think that's overkill. It's not something that I am particularly bothered by. It's not something that I don't think I would ever go to that extreme, but it does show you that it can be done. But they weren't going to the extremes of taking 3 pairs of socks and cutting their toothbrush in half so they could carry a 3 kilogram sleeping bag. That's really, really important. Okay, so cut out those big, heavy items first and foremost, and then you can start focusing on the other things. Another thing that is going to become easier for you over time is just getting familiar with what kind of setup that you like. Now, when you go on the first trip, or when you go hiking in the UK, you tend to pack a lot because you feel like you need everything. So you're going to have all of your waterproof kit. You're going to have lots of first aid stuff. You're going to have maybe a cooker, some snacks. You're going to have hats, sun cream, all that sort of stuff. Very important. Okay, I'm not saying don't take all of those things, but what you're going to learn over time is all of the stuff that you like and what you're comfortable with, and then that helps streamline the setup. So, for instance, I know that I am quite likely to drink about 2 liters of water when we leave in the morning to when we get into where our lunch stop is on a typical trek. So typically for me, it's going to be about 2 liters of water. For some people, it's only one. For some people, it's three. Okay, but I am more familiar with that, so I know that I don't need to pack 3 liters. So I've saved myself a kilo there. Now, I'm not suggesting that the first thing you should do to try and cut down weight is save on water. It's really important that you are drinking. But again, now that I know how my body reacts, it's something that I'm a bit more prepared for. Snacks. You might be walking around carrying all of your snacks, and you might go, well, for a week, I'm going to need this and this and this. But actually, as you get more comfortable hiking, then you get more and more familiar. A good example of this is if any of you watching have got children, or you did DofE back in the day, the Duke of Edinburgh, then that's a typical example of where you see people massively overpack. You get these tiny kids with these huge backpacks, and you've always got the mugs swinging off the back, and you've got roll mats hanging off everywhere, and and they're reading these maps upside down, and it's hilarious. If you go driving through Wales or the Brecon Beacons around that time of year, you see all of them. But that's a good example of where they've taken everything, and then as they go and do more and more and more hiking, they go, okay, well, I didn't need 7 days worth of food. Okay, actually, I can take this away. I can take this away. I can take this away. Perhaps I didn't need all of this stuff, and that's one thing that is going to become easier with time and practice, is that you are going to learn what your setup is like, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and unfortunately, that does just come down to time. We can give you advice on where to get started. But over time, you will learn what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. And that will massively help you save weight when it comes down to packing, is just being familiar with your setup. Also, just knowing where everything is really useful. One of the conversation I was having this morning was about the fact that, we're going to be climbing Aconcagua. You've got all of this equipment. They were talking about introducing some new equipment on the trek. Maybe I'll just get this while I'm out there. As I was saying, I was like, well, when you get to higher altitudes, even when you do a base camp or a Kilimanjaro, it starts to affect your cognitive ability, and you want to know where everything is. So although I'm digressing slightly from how to pack light for a trekking trip, and I'm more now focusing on how to pack, having a really good system for everything is very important. So in my duffel bag, I have put everything into dry bags. Now, first and foremost, that's to keep things dry, as the name suggests. But the other reason is that it will become very, very easy for me to grab what I need and when I need it. So my duffel bag is split into different colored dry bags, which contain all of my equipment. It's the same for my rucksack. So when I go hiking out and about, my waterproofs are in a blue dry bag. My first aid kit happens to be in a red one. My warm clothes are in an orange one. So I've got this color system that's unique to me. Obviously, everyone's got a slightly different one, but it's unique to me. And it just means that when I'm hungry and tired and cold, and it might be nighttime, I can just get in and get exactly what I need. Or even in the tents, on our trips, you share tents, you share accommodation. When you've got somebody else packing next to you, you don't want to have loads and loads of stuff that it all gets mixed up and confusing. So by having a few things that are all kind of coded, it does make it very easy for you to find what stuff is yours and find exactly what you need when you need it. So yeah, develop a system, work out what's comfortable for you, work out where you like things, and in turn, your setup will become lighter because you'll work out what's essential and what isn't. I think that kind of covers the main points on how to pack light for a trekking trip, and that is the key thing. So we're packing light. You have got the ability then afterwards to add lots of things to make it a more comfortable adventure, but it is about packing light. Beth is messaging on Instagram. Very useful topic, as I've been compiling my last bits of kit for the Kilimanjaro trip, and this is when I typically start buying stuff that I don't need. Yeah, you're exactly right. That is, I am the worst for it. Is that I end up having everything neatly laid out, and then it will get to just before the trip, and I think, oh, okay, well, I'll just put this in as well, or I've seen this that I quite like. I've had to ban myself from going into Cotswolds. It's the outdoor shop. So if any of you are familiar with Cotswolds, the outdoor shop, I banned myself from going in because I spend a small fortune whenever I go in, and I just don't need it. And I have to keep telling myself, I don't need it. I've done these trips before and I haven't needed any new equipment. So why do I need it now? But it's really difficult when you see, oh, it's quite like a new jacket, new gilet, new backpack, new boots. Those are all the things that tend to get me. And also, actually, what really gets me is the section before you leave with all of those little bits. You see stuff that you didn't even think you needed, but that always gets me. I always end up walking away with loads of stuff from that last little section. But Beth, you're off to Kilimanjaro very, very soon. The countdown has begun, so I hope you have an amazing time. Definitely going to catch up with you before you go. So let me know if you've got any more questions, and we can sit down and kind of have a bit of a chat about that stuff. But it is really exciting, and there's lots of trips going on. So I know that lots of you will be in a similar position. We've got some Toubkal trips going out next month. We've got Kilimanjaro trip going out. We've got Nepal season is around the corner. So month after next, that's Nepal season kicking off again for the end of the year. So yeah, we've got a lot of trips going out. Everybody is going to be in the same position. So do remember that as well. Everybody is in the same or a similar position to you, and is worrying about this. And it's hilarious when you put those duffel bags down and you tell people, right, you've got 7 kilos and we've got scales, so we're going to be strict. Everybody starts panicking. Oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But definitely easier than you think. Question: I've been wondering whether my down jacket will be warm enough, and was thinking about bringing my synthetic belay jacket to wear as well as my down jacket. What's the recommended down fill? Good question. It really depends, and I'm not 100% sure what number I would recommend. I do have some brands and styles of jackets that I like. When it comes down to down versus synthetic, I think that's a really important conversation that a lot of people will be having. Down is traditionally warmer, but synthetic doesn't clump when it gets wet. So if you're debating between a down or a synthetic jacket, then really think about the environment that you're going into. And if there is a chance that you're going to get wet, synthetic is definitely the way forwards because it won't clump, and therefore you'll stay warmer. Or even if it does clump slightly, it will stay warmer. So that's kind of a main selling point on synthetic. However, my sleeping bag is always a down sleeping bag because I know that I've put that in a dry bag. It's not going to get wet, or it shouldn't get wet. Put that out in the evenings. It's warmer. That's kind of where I sit with it. Kilimanjaro is a very awkward trip to pack for because you pass through so many different zones and climates. You start off and it's a little bit jungly, and then you continue further up and it becomes quite arid, and then it gets a little bit colder, and then by the top it can be snow, winds, all that sort of stuff. So it's quite a difficult trip to pack for. So the key thing when you're packing for Kilimanjaro is going to be layering. And that's really, really important that you have a good layering system. So if you're unsure about your down jacket and you're debating taking your synthetic belay jacket to put over the top, that might be a great solution. But another thing to consider would be wearing some really, really, really good thermals. So thermal leggings and a thermal top, then having a fleece over the top, maybe like a thin sports fleece over the top. You could then put potentially a gilet or a down gilet or anything like that over, then your down jacket over the top, and then a waterproof. Now that layering system might seem a little bit overkill, but it gives you the ability to remove layers where needed, also focusing on retaining the heat around the center of the body, which is very important. You also want to focus on the head and the feet. That's something that I'm currently debating for my Kilimanjaro trip in the next couple of months. Is I got really cold feet last time, and I'm trying to work out how best to keep my feet warm. I get very cold feet going up Kilimanjaro, but the key thing is, rather than going straight for another down jacket or another jacket, which might add quite a lot of weight to your kit, can you save some weight, and is it better to maybe just increase your layering system slightly? Now, I'm not sure, but I can have a chat with you later on. But for everybody else watching, that's exactly what I talk about, or I was talking about at the beginning, where it comes to, am I gonna cut those small items out to make way for a bigger item, or can I reduce weight on those bigger items in some way, and that'll help me overall. So again, do I want that big, heavy 3 kilo sleeping bag, or can I get a 1.5 kilo sleeping bag? You know, do I need to take 2 jackets, or maybe I have a better layering system, and that also ends up saving weight. So there's not always like a right answer. Like sometimes it does come down to personal preference, but yeah, I would kind of say that's something to consider. Excellent. Has anybody else got any questions whilst we are here? I'm going to give it about another 5 minutes, just because I know that everybody will have their lunch breaks and all that sort of stuff, and I'm keen not to cut too far into that. But do let me know if you've got any questions, whether you're watching on Instagram, whether you're watching on Facebook. Comment in and let me know. It doesn't have to be specifically to do with packing for a trekking trip. It can be around what trips you've got coming up. So do feel now that you've got a bit of time to send in questions. But great questions, Beth. Thank you very, very much for sending those in. And hopefully I'll get to catch up with you soon before you head out on your Kilimanjaro trip. So just to recap then, whilst everybody is hopefully thinking about some questions that they may want to ask, if I kind of just go over the big points. So packing light, first of all, make sure that you have cut down on those big ticket items, those big items, sleeping bags, rucksacks. Second of all, make sure that you're not overpacking. Sorry, that should have been first, but don't overpack. That's the key thing. Don't take too much. You don't need a week's worth of clothing to go to Machu Picchu. Okay, you just don't. You're going to be wearing day one on day one, so that doesn't even need to go into your duffel bag or anything like that. You're then probably going to wear similar to day one on day two. You might then want to change a couple of things, and then you can save yourself a lot of weight when you're doing trips like that. Things to think about. If you're doing a longer trip like Everest Base Camp. Now, Keith, if you look at his packing video for Everest Base Camp, actually that's one that we'll put into the notes. But yeah, Tom, if you can put in a video on a packing list. Keith is very, very good at kind of showing you how everything goes into the bag and how it all packs. And he's always said that he's got enough weight to be able to take a fresh t-shirt for basically every single day of like a base camp trip. Now you can do that. Okay, that's absolutely fine. But if you're struggling to have a fresh pair of clothes for every single day, or a fresh t-shirt at least, then do consider taking some of the biodegradable soap with you. And there are opportunities for you to wash your clothing. In Namche and Dingboche, I believe there are now places where you can go and take your clothes to like a laundrette. And the reason it's important to go to those two places is because quite often that's where you will spend 2 days acclimatizing. So you've got time for your clothes to be washed and dried. So that's something to have a think about as well, is potentially could you take something with you so that you can wash that kit, and then that saves you weight as well. Okay. Another question. So while you've been discussing weight, I'm looking at upgrading my trekking poles and trying to decide between aluminium or spending the extra money for carbon. Do I see many carbon poles breaking? And is the lower weight of carbon poles worth it in your view? Okay, again, very, very good question. I don't see many carbon poles breaking from my experience. I haven't noticed that too much. Trekking poles is a really interesting one. It's something that won't necessarily cut into your weight allowance because they should be in your hands and you should be using them on a day-to-day basis. But it is important as well. You don't want super, super heavy ones. I have traditionally used aluminium in the past, but I also don't necessarily use them now either. And there's a bit of a debate about whether you should use trekking poles or whether you don't. I think generally most people accept that by using trekking poles, you are saving your knees. They are more worthwhile. They are better if you can use trekking poles. That is better for you. I happen to not really, I find them a little bit awkward. I haven't quite gotten into the stride of using them. I should get better, and obviously it will make a positive impact on the longevity that I'm able to go hiking. I'm a little bit luckier being younger. It's not something that's a massive problem for me, but I do have issues with my knees, so I do need to really start using stuff like that. But I currently don't. What I would say is if you don't use hiking poles, it might not be the best time to go and buy them and then use them on the first day of your trip. It may be something that you want to consider getting like a month before and actually going and getting some practice in the hills and the mountains so that you become more familiar with them. I see so many people with new sets of trekking poles turning up on a trip, and that's the first time they've ever used them. And then they get to the end of the day and they're like, well, I'm not really sure if I liked them. I don't actually think they made any difference. And it's just because you're not used to them. It's because you haven't learned how to use them in the right way. And sometimes they can become more of a hindrance. So if you have got trekking poles, great, get out and practice with them. If you haven't and you think you would, then please buy them before you turn up on the trip. And I think that will make a big difference. But to answer the question, is the lower weight of the carbon poles worth it in my view? With my limited knowledge from using trekking poles, I am going to say I don't think it's worth it. But I'm really interested to hear what other people who use trekking poles a lot more think. It might be something that people go, yeah, absolutely, I'd changed and it was a real game changer for me. I personally don't think it's worth it because I think the weight difference is so marginal that you don't feel like a massive benefit from it. And as you're normally carrying your trekking poles when you're on the trip itself, I think that weight isn't too bad. But that's just my opinion. So yeah, if it's a massive cost difference, it might not be worth it. But in the comments section, please let me know what your opinions are, and if those of you who have got carbon poles feel like it's really worth it, then do let us know. Really happy to kind of learn a bit more about that. Okay, well, there don't seem to be any more questions coming in for this session, so I'm gonna leave it there for now. We will be back next week, I believe, for another session of the Bucket List Adventure Travel Show. Just thinking, there was another question coming in which caught me by surprise. This one is from Christina. So the best way to use poles is not thinking about them. She's got foldable aluminium poles, and they are altogether less than 500 grams. Carbon is not necessary. Yeah, that's a really good point, Christina. It's not necessarily going to save you huge amounts of weights. If aluminium poles are coming in at 500 grams, are you massively going to notice the difference between 200 to 500? I don't know. I actually don't know. But it doesn't seem like a huge amount of weight that you'll save for potentially a massive cost increase. And that's the other thing, is that these trips can be very expensive depending on the level of kit that you buy. And if it's something that you enjoy doing and you're going to continue doing for a long time, then that's fantastic and that's brilliant. And I would always say, buy expensive and it will last you a very long time. There's that phrase, isn't there, of buy cheap, buy twice, and that's something that I think if you're looking at doing this for the foreseeable, do invest in high quality gear. But when you're first starting out, that is really difficult because these bits of kit can cost hundreds and sometimes thousands. So you want to make sure that you are balancing the budget a little bit. So you might have to sacrifice high quality on a few things, and then when you figure out what you like, slowly start introducing a higher quality of kit. But yeah, really good point. And I think when you put it down like that the aluminium poles that you've got are 500 grams, it's like, is there much difference for the others? Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there, but thank you all so much for your questions. Thank you for watching. I really hope that you got something out of this live and that you found it informative and useful. We're going to put it up on it will also be on the Facebook pages. So if you want to watch it again, or if you are watching this and it's not live, then do feel free to drop your questions into the comment section below, and one of us will get back to you and answer. So if you're not watching this live, don't worry, you haven't missed out on the chance to ask your question. Do please comment in and we'll be able to get back to you with any of those questions. For now, I'm going to leave it for this week. I'm going to play a video of trekking in the Sahara Desert, which is a really cool video. So I want to show that to you guys as I sign off for this week. Okay, but have a great week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.